That phrase takes me back to senior kindergarten when I was 5 years old, where we would read the date written on the blackboard every day. However, the year 1999 remains in my mind like a scar, an indelible memory that I can't erase no matter how hard I try. 99 marked many milestones. The first time I lost a tooth, the first time I flew on an airplane, and sadly, it was also the year I lost my childhood innocence. That indelible memory began with the new TV my dad brought home. At the time, Pokémon was the big craze at school. Pokémon cards, sticker games, and especially the TV show. So every time I came home from school, I'd be glued to the TV, waiting for Pokémon to air at 5:00 p.m. The only problem was that my dad watched the news at 5:30 and the Pokémon episodes were back-to-back, so I always missed one episode every day. I complained about this endlessly, and perhaps tired of my whining, my dad bought another TV. He put the new TV in my room, but unfortunately, it was just a tiny, old, beat-up TV with rabbit ear antennas. It only had 20 channels, and none of them showed Pokémon. However, I didn't mind much. I was incredibly excited to have my own TV in my room. After flipping through the channels, I realized only Channel 2 TV Kids was worth watching, and I watched it for a while. It wasn't until several months later that I discovered Channel 21. One day in April, I was flipping through channels to see if Pokémon was on. I typed 21 on the remote, hoping for more channels, and was thrilled to find a new one. My dad was surprised too, but he let me watch since it seemed to broadcast children's programs. That channel was called Caledon Local 21, and I later found out it actually broadcast from the town of Caledon, Ontario, a place very close to my city. The shows on Caledon Local 21 looked very amateurish, and half the time, I didn't understand what was going on. However, as I grew up, every time I thought about that channel, I realized how truly bizarre those shows were, and I had to wonder, what the hell was I watching? Below is a list of the shows and episodes I remember watching on Caledon Local 21. The fact that I can recall such precise details also makes me uneasy, but I guess things like this often get etched into your memory. I only found 3 shows on this channel, probably because it only broadcast from 4:00 p.m. to 9:00 p.m. April 99, Booby Episode 6 Together. I remember Booby as a show where the characters were simply real hands, not puppets or anything, just hands. The show was about a hand named Booby who encountered a new situation in each episode. Each episode was only 5 minutes long and looked like it was filmed in front of a damp, dilapidated wall, with the hands always appearing on a red tablecloth-covered table. Very low budget, clearly. This was the first episode I watched. It began with Booby trying to get ketchup out of a bottle. The shot actually showed him vigorously slapping the bottom of the bottle for 3 minutes. Finally, another hand appeared and looked at Booby. "Together," the other hand said, and they both slapped the bottle until the ketchup finally splattered all over the table. I found this scene a little funny at the time. Afterwards, Booby stared at the ketchup puddle on the table for a few seconds, then turned to look at the camera as it slowly zoomed in on him. Mr. Bear's Cellar, Episode 12. The name sounds so ominous now. This show featured a man in a bear mascot suit, and every day a new child would visit his cellar. It was always children. The show was filmed with a handheld camcorder, and the quality was terrible. The police asked me many questions about this show. This episode started with Mr. Bear sitting at a table playing chess by himself. At first, I didn't realize it, but this table was exactly like the one in the Booby show. He sat there playing for a while until there was a knock at the door. The camera then panned up the stairs, where the knock came again. Mr. Bear climbed the stairs and opened the door, revealing 2 children, one boy about my age and one girl who looked about 8. Mr. Bear danced gleefully, then began talking to the children. I remember not hearing what they said clearly. Mr. Bear led the children into the cellar, which was quite dark, lit only by a small oil lamp on the table. I don't recall any more details, except that he sang a song that I also couldn't hear clearly, probably because of the large bear mask. The episode ended with them playing hide-and-seek, the children hiding in a closet while Mr. Bear counted. May 99, Soup and Spoon ***. I don't think this was a real show. It was probably some kind of special film. After watching this, I stopped tuning into Caledon Local 21 for a while because I found it too silly, especially since Pokémon now aired at 4:30 and 5:00. I don't remember much about this show, only a scene with a can of soup and a spoon tied to strings, swinging in front of the camera as if someone was holding them. The strange thing was that the show was filmed in a basement that looked exactly like the cellar in Mr. Bear's cellar. The entire show lasted about half an hour, with bizarre scenes like the spoon chasing the can of soup to eat it. The show ended with a shot of a table, similar to the one from Booby, with about 7 children sitting around it, each with a bowl of soup. They sat staring into the camera with confused, even frightened eyes. The cameraman held up the can in front of the children and said, "Are you ready?" Then the show stopped. July 99, summer. I hadn't watched Channel 21 for a while. One day, while at a friend's house for a sleepover, we decided to turn on Channel 21, and to our surprise, it was still broadcasting. Perhaps they had changed the broadcast times. Mr. Bear's Cellar, Episode 23. This episode fascinated my friend and me because it had cursing, but now that I think back, I realize there was something off about the way it was filmed. The episode began with the camera tilted, pointed at Mr. Bear as he walked up the stairs. Then the screen went black for a few seconds before returning to normal, facing Mr. Bear. Another child, about 11 or 12 years old, was talking to him. The child began to raise his voice, saying it was late and his sister needed to go home. You could hear other voices in the distance. I distinctly remember Mr. Bear saying, "Get out, you're not invited," in a deep voice through his bear mask. The child turned to go up the stairs, saying as he walked that he would call the police. Mr. Bear suddenly ran towards the boy. He screamed and ran away. The camera then stopped. The screen was just static. August 99, Booby Episode 42, Playing with Scissors. One rainy afternoon, out of boredom, I decided to turn on Channel 21. A show about a man sitting in an armchair was ending. I've forgotten its content. When the Booby episode began, I thought it was for teenagers because it had blood and was quite gruesome. Later, when the police recounted everything, I learned whose blood it was. The episode showed Booby and another hand wearing a ribbon on its pinky finger, perhaps Booby's girlfriend. Booby was jumping back and forth with scissors while the other hand dangled aimlessly. Suddenly, a smaller hand appeared, jerking violently as if being forced by someone underneath the table. Booby looked into the camera and said, "Scissors are very dangerous, kids. Hold them carefully." Booby then used the scissors to cut the smaller hand's thumb. Blood began to flow, and muffled screams filled the air. The sound of scissors cutting through bone made me turn off the TV immediately. I didn't dare tell my dad about this, for fear he would forbid me from watching TV. August 99. I didn't want to watch Channel 21 after that horrific Booby episode, but somehow, I was still curious about Mr. Bear's Cellar. Mr. Bear's Cellar, Episode 28. This episode was studied very, very carefully by the police. The entire episode consisted only of Mr. Bear sitting on a chair talking to the viewers. "Hello, children, do you want to visit my cellar? If so, write to this address." The screen then displayed a colorful address, and this was the only image until the episode ended. And guess what I did? I sent a letter to Mr. Bear, or rather, the sick individual who played him. I did it mostly out of curiosity. My dad agreed because he thought it was a real children's show, but of course, he had never seen what was broadcast on Channel 21. I wrote the letter in my neatest handwriting. I think I wrote that I wanted to meet Mr. Bear and asked if Booby also lived in the cellar. My dad then mailed the letter to the address Mr. Bear gave on the show. That address stayed on screen all day for some reason. About a week later, I received a reply, which surprised me greatly. I still have the letter I received on August 15, 99. Its content was as follows. Dear Elliot asterisk, thank you so much for sending a letter. I look forward to meeting you in my cellar. We will play games, watch movies, and camp by the fire in the woods. And yes, Booby also lives in my cellar. He is a very good friend of mine. Come to my house at address redacted by police, Caledon, ON. I look forward to having fun with you. Love asterisk. Mr. Bear. I couldn't believe my dad didn't find this suspicious because he actually drove me to that house. And that's when the police showed up. Endless questions, photos of frightened children, the forest. That's why I'm writing this blog. That psychopath and his accomplices did terrible things back then, and now it seems he's trying to contact me again. Everything related to the police came back to that. It took me back to '99. More than a decade later, everything is happening again. Update, September 21, 2011. Everyone has been emailing me asking exactly what happened in '99. I'll explain. The strange TV shows I watched seemed designed to lure children to Mr. Bear's house. What Mr. Bear did shocked the entire town. My dad actually drove me to Caledon, to the address Mr. Bear left in the letter. The house was on the outskirts of town, in the middle of an empty field. I still remember that house. It looked like an old farmhouse built in the early 1900s. The windows were all boarded up, and the house seemed to be in severe disrepair. As we walked up to the house, I remember my dad kept double-checking the address, then looking at the house with disbelief. Then the door opened. I thought Mr. Bear would open it, but I was surprised to see a police officer step out of the creaking door. The officer started talking to my dad while I quickly asked if this was Mr. Bear's house. The officer's face scrunched slightly, and he mumbled, "Oh God," or something similar. He began talking quietly to my dad so I couldn't hear, even though my dad told me to go back to the car, and so we just drove home. My dad was silent the whole way back. I felt something strange had happened. My dad didn't tell me what happened for a long time. I also forgot about it. Channel 21 was no longer broadcasting, and when I asked about it, my dad denied its existence. I think I was 13 when I finally learned the truth. One day, I remembered Channel 21 and asked my dad about it. I guess he finally decided to tell me the truth. Caledon Local 21 was a local TV channel that operated from October 1997 to August 1999 in the Peel, Ontario area. The entire channel was broadcast from a house in Caledon, the house I had visited, and was run by a man unknown to anyone in town. The channel could only be viewed on old TVs because the signal was only picked up by weak rabbit-ear antennas. That man created all the shows on the channel. All of them were children's programs. His hands were Booby. He was Mr. Bear, and he was also the mysterious cameraman. The real reason he created the channel was even more terrifying than people thought. As you might guess, he kidnapped children and kept them in his cellar. But while most people thought he was a serial child abuser, he actually wanted to use the children for another purpose. The day I visited, he had fled the house the night before, one day before the police launched their investigation. I wasn't the only one watching this channel. Update, November 9, 2011. Sorry for not answering questions for a long time. I haven't accessed my email account in a while. Anyway, let me clarify what I know now. Last October, I visited the house that used to be owned by the operator of Caledon Local 21. Currently, 2 women live there, running a daycare. How ironic. Now I will answer the questions that people have emailed me. Question: who else watched Caledon Local 21? Answer: I know for sure there were others who watched, including the children who were brought to Mr. Bear's house. After a Google search, I found a few people on a Newgrounds forum discussing the shows on Caledon Local 21. They talked about the children's shows I had watched, but also mentioned 2 other shows I had never heard of. One user named I Am Real Life seemed to know all the shows broadcast on Channel 21. These are the 2 shows I never saw. The Fallen Angel, I Am Real Life, described this as a rather boring show about a man mumbling in front of the camera about having to worship Satan and please him before it was too late. Paint with the Soul, I Am Real Life, and another user named CD92 discussed this show. They described it as Blair Witch style, with the cameraman wandering through a forest at night without doing anything noteworthy. I will try to find that discussion and see if I can get a link. Question: where is Mr. Bear, or the man in the suit now? Answer: if I knew, I would have said so a long time ago. I have no idea if he's alive or dead. Hopefully dead. The next time I see my dad's friend, I will ask more about this. Maybe I'll get a clearer answer. Question: what did Mr. Bear do to the children? Answer: this is the most common question I received. I learned this in October through my dad's friend, a former Caledon area police officer. Apparently, the person playing Mr. Bear took the children out of the house and into the nearby forest. What he did there, the police weren't sure, but they found 16 charred bodies of children, aged 4 to 13, in a 15x 15-foot deep pit located deep in the woods. My dad's friend didn't want to reveal details, but I will meet him next Thursday. Perhaps I can dig up more information. That's all I can share for now. Thank you for your interest in my blog. I will try to gather more information for the next post. I myself am also very interested in this case. I have a right to know what happened. Update, February 1, 2012. I apologize for not posting in a while. I seem to have lost interest in this blog because I couldn't find any more information about the identity of the Caledon Local 21 operator. However, a few weeks ago, I found an important clue. I received unexpected information from the father of a child I used to babysit. He lives right across from my house, and when his children were young, I used to take care of them. Currently, he is unemployed. He used to live near the forest outside Caledon and had witnessed the operator's activities in that forest. His name is Anthony Polo. When he lived in the small house near the forest, he would often go into the woods to smoke some weed before returning to his carpentry work. Polo recounted that sometimes he would hear children's voices echoing from deep within the forest, along with flickering lights in the distance. Polo said these incidents started in late 1997. Note, this is around the time Caledon Local 21 began broadcasting. Initially, he didn't mind, but later he became annoyed and decided to investigate. Polo then described the entire scene he witnessed when he arrived. There was a group of children, he said, about 13 to 17 kids, aged 5 to 12, gathered around a large burning fire pit. With them was a single adult. Polo spoke to the man, noting his unusually disheveled appearance. He looked like a drug addict with constant jerky movements and asked why he was in the woods with the children. The man replied that they were camping, something they did regularly. Polo didn't suspect anything. Caledon has the lowest crime rate in Canada, so he simply told them to be quieter. Then Polo paused for a moment, then said that those people didn't get any quieter. Sometimes he even heard loud chanting from the children in an unknown language. He didn't bother meeting the man again because he was about to move. I told Polo that the man was probably the owner of Caledon Local 21, but he was skeptical because he heard the man had moved to Pickering, a smaller city east of Toronto. What I know now is that the man regularly took children into the woods to camp. The fire pit Polo described could be where the children's bodies were found. The children Polo saw were probably the deceased victims. The man has moved to a city called Pickering. I will discuss this with my dad's friend, the former police officer, to see if this information matches what the police know about the man. I also want to see if he has more information about the broadcasts on Caledon Local 21. Update, March 20, 2012. Good news here. I spoke with my dad's friend, and he revealed quite a bit of information. First, I asked if the police had any information about the Caledon Local 21 operator. He replied that they only had old leads for years and never found a suspect. However, Peel Regional Police had some videotapes found in the house where Caledon Local 21 broadcast, and he took me there to watch a few tapes. I guess I haven't said much about him. My dad's friend is named Mitchell Wilson, a pretty nice guy. He seemed to understand my desire to know what happened in the late 90s at that house. He thought my dad's silence all those years was a mistake. He took me to the Davis Road Police Station. If you don't know, this is the largest station in Caledon and one of the largest in the Peel region. Each of the 9 police stations across Peel kept a few videotapes, and the Davis Road Station had 3 tapes. I was allowed to watch all of them. However, for obvious reasons, I wasn't allowed to take any tapes home. Booby Episode 2, Friends Are Like Flowers. This was one of the earliest Booby episodes. The filming quality was even worse than usual, probably an even older camera. But the setting was still the same as other Booby episodes. I recognized it immediately. The episode began with Booby swaying back and forth leisurely for a few seconds before another hand appeared. This hand was much smaller, seemingly belonging to a child. The small hand eagerly bounced around before sliding close to Booby, touching its fingers to Booby's as if kissing it. After a few seconds, Booby grabbed the small hand and squeezed it. This lasted at least 10 seconds before the camera slowly panned left until both hands were out of frame. The The camera continued to pan until it focused on a single, wilting dandelion. The camera slowly zoomed in on the flower, and a little girl's voice said, "Friends are like flowers in the garden of life." The episode ended there. Paint with the Soul Episode 10, Discarded Rubbish. This was one of the shows that I Am Real Life and CD92 discussed on Newgrounds. I told the police about this, and they said there were 12 episodes of the show produced and broadcast from December 1, 97 to January 8, 98. As described by I Am Real Life and CD92, the episode opened with the cameraman wandering through the forest. It seemed dark and the sun was setting. The cameraman walked along a trail until he came to an area full of rubbish strewn among the leaves. The camera panned across each item: wrappers, bottles, bags, and boxes, each shown for a few seconds. Then the camera focused on a specific area, and the man began to speak. I remember he spoke in a quiet, timid voice, and I swear I had heard this voice somewhere before, perhaps in another Caledon Local 21 show. I could barely hear him, but he mostly talked about how humans are rubbish or something about saving oneself by cleaning up our trash. The content sounds silly, but I still felt a strange anxiety because that forest could be where the bodies were found, couldn't it? Mr. Bear's Cellar, Episode 25. When the police officer brought this tape, I blurted out, "Oh my God," and then snickered. Of course, I got strange looks from the surrounding staff, but Wilson explained to them my experience with Mr. Bear and that I still had the letter he sent me. Like previous episodes, this one also featured a man in a bear mascot suit. The episode began with Mr. Bear waddling to a red cloth-covered table, holding a bottle of orange juice in his paws. On the table were 16 small cups and another small bottle containing an unknown liquid. Mr. Bear poured an equal amount of orange juice into each cup, then opened the small bottle and dropped one drop into each cup. He moved out of frame, there were some rattling sounds, then he reappeared from behind the camera, followed by 16 children. Some looked as young as 4, others almost teenagers. As the children entered, the officer commented that this was the only episode that showed all 16 victims. The children looked quite calm, except for one boy with clear bruises on his face. Unlike the other children, this boy had a more frightened expression. He looked about 11 or 12, and that made me realize who he was. This was the child who asked about his sister and then met an unknown fate at the end of episode 23, the one I watched in July 99. When I told the officer about this, he confirmed it was the same child. The boy also appeared in episode 24, an episode that only aired once at 3:00 a.m. in July 99, but the police have not yet found that tape. Mr. Bear began singing a song about citrus fruits and the benefits of vitamin C. I could barely hear the lyrics because his voice was muffled by the bear mask. The children took turns drinking the orange juice. The boy from episode 23 drank reluctantly, and the episode ended. After watching the 3 tapes owned by the Davis Road Police Station, I was temporarily satisfied, but only temporarily. I still wanted to know the whole story, but the police kept repeating the old assessments that the creator of Caledon Local 21 was a fanatic and a pervert. I will pause here, focus on getting into university first, and then seek more information. I hope to return to this blog soon. Update May 12, 2012. On April 17, I finally got my G license in Ontario, Canada. This allows you to drive by yourself or with a few people after 6 months. I took this opportunity and drove to Caledon for a Sunday trip. Since I hadn't updated the blog in a long time, I thought I should revisit the house where the TV channel that haunted my childhood once broadcast. The house looked completely different from when I last saw it in October. It was no longer used as a daycare, now just standing deserted. However, there was a "for sale" sign indicating that the house was still owned by someone, but they wanted to sell it. The abandoned house stirred up vague memories, especially the day my dad took me to visit Mr. Bear. A feeling of dread washed over me. What happened to the children when they lived in that house? I walked up the steps to the front door and looked through the window. Inside, I saw an almost empty hallway with a few boxes at the end. At the end of the hallway to the right was an open doorway, probably leading to the kitchen. To the left were 2 doors that seemed to lead to rooms. Seeing it from the outside through the window, I wondered where the cellar entrance was and if it was sealed off. I walked around to the back of the house and found the answer. Two wooden doors, almost flat to the ground, locked with a large padlock. This was definitely the cellar entrance. Not wanting to stay any longer, you can't imagine the thoughts swirling in my head at that moment I left. Behind the house, the empty field stretched until it met a dense forest on the horizon. I wondered if this was the forest where the children's bodies were found. Screw it, I thought, and walked across the field behind the house to enter the woods. The forest was strangely silent, except for a few periodic sounds of a woodpecker drilling into a distant tree. I cautiously made my way deeper into the forest, not really caring where I was going. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like there was something I needed to find. I reached a sparser part of the forest and saw a few small houses in the distance. The image of Polo's house flashed in my mind, and I wondered if one of these houses belonged to him. I approached a small clearing where I saw 3 large logs placed around a charred area, a sign that a small fire had been recently lit. "Get out of our base right now." Those words made me almost jump. I turned to my left and saw 2 people in black running towards me. Initially, I thought I should run, but as they got closer, I realized they were just teenagers, about 13 or 14, maybe even 12. As they approached, they noticed my height. I'm about 61, while they were only about 57 or 58, maybe even shorter. One of them, wearing a slipknot shirt, said dismissively, "We told you to get out." I stood my ground and shrugged. The shorter one, wearing a Metallica shirt, pulled out a butterfly knife and pointed it at me. "No, you don't want to do that," I said in the deepest, most serious voice I could muster, trying to sound cool. I pulled out my phone. The 2 kids backed away. The one in the Metallica shirt put his knife away. "Hey man, we don't like other people at our base, so can you leave?" the slipknot-shirted kid said, clearly a bit scared. I really had no reason to stay in the forest, so I simply said, "Okay," and turned to leave. But then I realized this was a good opportunity. "Have you heard about the guy who killed a bunch of kids in this forest about 13 years ago?" I asked. The 2 looked at each other, confused, before the Metallica-shirted kid replied, "Yeah, who hasn't heard of him?" he said as if I were an idiot. The slipknot-shirted kid continued, "That guy still lives around here, in the drain pipe. My brother said his friend once saw him in the bear suit, wandering around the woods at night." My instinct told me that this was probably just a made-up story, and that the owner of Caledon Local 21 had probably disappeared long ago, existing only as a local legend in this small community. But with human curiosity, the thought of the mystery still piqued my interest. "And that drain pipe, where is it?" I asked, just out of curiosity. I didn't really believe their story. The Metallica-shirted kid looked at me for a moment, his eyes seeming annoyed but also a little curious. "You're not from around here, are you? Why are you here?" I admit I was a bit startled by the question, but I thought I should explain why I was there to avoid misunderstanding. I told the 2 about my experience with the man and Caledon Local 21, that I had to come here to find closure, though I myself wasn't really sure. The 2 seemed familiar with the channel because they smiled and looked at each other when I mentioned it. They also became more understanding and showed me in detail how to get to the drain pipe. Then I decided to go back the way I came, leaving their base. But now you're probably wondering why I skipped the details of what the 2 kids told me. That's because I want to end this post with what I gathered. Here's what the 2 kids said. The drain pipe is right in front of their base, in the same direction I was heading. The mouth of the drain pipe leads to a small river where sewage is dumped. Nearby is a small playground. They said that this playground is rarely used. The man supposedly lives in the large pipe where rainwater flows out. Many people have seen him, although he always wears a bear mask or the full bear suit. Note, I don't believe this is true. It's probably just a folk tale made up by Caledon residents. This story doesn't seem plausible at all. Why wouldn't anyone call the police? Doesn't the guy look very suspicious? And such questions make this story unreliable. I might visit the drain pipe, not because I believe the story, but because I need a reason to go back to Caledon so this blog doesn't become boring with no more tapes to watch. I don't know what else to write about. Thank you for continuing to support me and this blog. I know many people are looking forward to more information about what happened in Caledon in '99, and I will do my best to continue researching this topic. Elliot signing off. Update October 4, 2012. Wow, almost 5 months since the last update. I guess everyone probably thinks I'm dead, right? Fortunately, I'm still here. Seriously, I've been really busy these past few months, and a blog about something that could have killed me as a child isn't on my priority list right now. I'm currently living in Waterloo, Ontario, studying computer engineering at the University of Waterloo. Yes, I'm a real nerd. As you can imagine, engineering is no easy game, so obviously I almost forgot about this blog. But as you can see, I'm back. I remembered that I needed to visit the drain pipe that the kids in the Caledon forest told me about. It's in a clearing between forested areas near a swamp. Unfortunately, I found nothing but a turtle retracting into its shell when it saw me. I took a few photos of the pipe and posted them. Also, let me clarify, it's not a drain pipe as the kids said. What I saw was just a simple pipe, probably used to drain water from the swamp. When I returned from Caledon, I just kept delaying uploading everything until I completely forgot about this blog. It wasn't important anymore. Please forgive me. It wasn't until recently that I started caring about my case again. On September 10, I received an email from this address, return@hotmail.com. Sounds funny, right? But then it got stranger. Here's the content of the email the person sent. To my dear boy, Elliot *. I miss you so much. Oh, how you've grown, your sparkling eyes haven't changed, those eyes always searching for adventure. Oh, just imagining it warms my old bear heart. The day you visited me, I was so happy I wanted to go out and pick strawberries. He told me you'd come back looking. Oh yes, he said you'd come back looking. Now it's almost time. You won't be alone anymore. I'm sorry I couldn't greet you when you visited, not just once, but twice. But don't worry, you'll be playing with other children soon. I'll try to make my cellar cozier than ever. 100 furry hugs, *. Mr. Bear. Obviously, this letter is fake, but I still want to thank whoever sent it. Just reading this letter sent shivers down my spine, but thanks to it, I'm interested in continuing the blog. I guess pursuing the mysteries I've always wondered about is exciting. My roommate knows about this. He even thought the letter was real and seemed more scared than I was at first. But then I just shrugged, and he did too. I mean, what are the chances this letter is real? How would Mr. Bear know I visited Caledon on those occasions, let alone know my email or my interest in his cellar? I'm going to reply to the email from return. Just looking at the email address, you can tell someone wants to scare me. It didn't really work, but I still want to thank that person for rekindling my interest in this matter. Maybe I'll find out more about what happened to Mr. Bear. Hopefully so, because even though I don't believe the letter, a part of me still feels uneasy. Thank you to everyone who is still following and has become loyal fans. You are the reason I choose to continue. Update, November 9, 2013. Wow, I can't believe this blog hasn't been deleted yet. I haven't posted in a whole year. I have my reasons, and I don't want to discuss them right now. It's been a pretty haunting year for me. Some of you were right. I shouldn't try to go back and relive the mysteries of my childhood, but I couldn't resist. More than a year has passed since the last post, and a lot has happened. Let's recap where I am now regarding the whole Mr. Bear incident. Return@hotmail.com is no longer in use. I tried replying to the email but got no response. I tried again in March but still no luck. I have now moved to Ottawa, the capital of Canada, for those who don't know, for university, so it's been a while since I've been back to Caledon or home in Peel. I have my own reasons for leaving, and I'm sure you can guess why. I had to create a new email account because people kept sending me prank emails pretending to be Mr. Bear. Thanks but no thanks. Why am I back on this blog? Mitchell Wilson, remember my dad's old friend who was a cop? He called me on October 23 about a tape found at a Brampton Public Library branch. Brampton is my hometown, in case you didn't know. He said he wasn't allowed to discuss the contents of the tape with me because it was still evidence, but he invited me to come by and watch it when I was home. That tape has kept me thinking because we all know the contents of the tapes I've watched before. I can only imagine what's on it and guess that it must be related to Caledon Local 21. I guess I just want to say that I will continue this blog and thank everyone who has followed it so far. I don't know when the next post will be, but when I watch that tape, I will write about what I find. I don't know what to expect, but the thought of watching another tape makes me feel excited about this whole mystery again. Signed, Elliot. Update, January 16, 2014. This has been a long year for me. University has brought sleepless nights as usual, especially after I moved to Ottawa, which is ironically known as a party haven. But now I'm home with my dad in Brampton, where I grew up. I came home on December 18 and spent time visiting friends and family, or at least that's what I wanted to do, but the joyous, festive atmosphere I usually feel at this time of year was gone. To answer the hundreds of emails and comments I've received, yes, I watched the tapes that my dad's friend Mitchell Wilson promised to show me. However, these tapes were like a vow. I wanted to know more, but I wanted to forget everything. I couldn't stop. I had to watch those tapes, not just for myself, but for all of you who are just as curious as I am about the man in the haunting bear suit from the past. However, after watching the tapes, a sense of horror once again washed over me. The feeling of knowing that all the children in those videos are dead, that I could have been one of them, and that humanity truly is a dark place. If you haven't skipped this part to read the fascinating details below, thank you for your patience. On Friday, January 1, I called Mitchell Wilson and asked if there was any time I could come to watch the tapes. Things were quite calm at the station due to a snowstorm, so he told me I could come anytime during the day. The tapes were stored at a branch not far from my house. I navigated the slushy, snow-covered roads and terrible Brampton drivers to reach the Peel Regional Police Station in the Bramalea City Center. I met Wilson at the reception desk, where he led me up to the second floor and into a small office. He told me to wait while he went to get the tapes. Before leaving the office, he turned back and asked, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Of course, I wanted to, or at least I thought so. Plus, Wilson's friend had to pull some strings to get me in here, and I didn't want to waste this opportunity. This branch had 4 tapes, but I was only allowed to watch 3 because the 4th tape was too badly damaged to play on a VCR. Paint with the Soul Episode 3, How to Clean a Room. I had almost forgotten about this show. I had never seen it on TV, but I had seen an episode at the Caledon police station. This episode opened with the camera panning around a small, empty room. On the wall opposite the door was a window. It was daylight outside. The cameraman approached the window, revealing a small, empty field before a dense, dark forest about 15 feet away. The camera panned back towards the door, and finally, a voice spoke. "Today, I will teach you how to properly clean a room." I recognized the cameraman's voice as exactly the same as before, soft, timid, but this time with a clear stammer. And this is when things got weird. The cameraman pointed the camera down at his feet, revealing a metal broom, and grabbed it with his other hand. It was a white man's hand, so it was easy to see fresh, red blood staining his hand. The man explained that to clean the room, you needed to make a sacrifice, and with that, he began to smash the broom against the white plaster ceiling. Soon, a large hole appeared in the ceiling, revealing the wooden roof supports. The floor was now messy with broken plaster chunks and covered in white powder that had fallen from the ceiling. The man turned the camera to the floor and began to crush the larger ceiling pieces with his foot. Then he backed towards the door, pointed the camera at the mess he had just created, and now the room is. The episode ended before he finished the sentence. Wilson warned that the next 2 tapes would be even more shocking. I insisted on continuing, even though a voice in my head told me I shouldn't. Booby Episode 30, The Children of Light. This was the Booby show, one of the shows I had watched as a child. I had never seen this episode before, and now I wish that were still true. The episode opened like every other episode I had seen, an adult hand swaying back and forth. After a few seconds, Booby turned towards the camera and said, "The best songs are sung by children." Then the hand disappeared from the screen, lowering below the tabletop. Just a few seconds later, the shot suddenly cut to outdoors, towards a small fire in a pit. Night had fallen, and the shot seemed to take place in a clearing in the woods, though the poor image quality made it difficult to see clearly. The camera slowly zoomed in on the steadily burning flame. Suddenly, a human hand was forced into the flames by 2 larger hands. The small hand, seemingly a child's, was held tightly by the adult hands. For the first few seconds, no sound was made until a song began to play. I recognized it as a familiar childhood song, one I used to sing in school or church. I went to Catholic school. The song continued to play as the hand was held in the bright orange flames. It continued to play as the hand struggled to break free from the grip. It continued to play as the skin began to redden, then peel, and it continued to play as black smoke rose from the hand. It only took a few minutes for the hand to become charred black, with only a few white bone fragments showing beneath the burned flesh. Damn, that image is etched into my mind. The hand was now limp, no longer moving. The episode ended here. Mr. Bear's Cellar, Episode 30. Mr. Bear never ceased to give me chills, especially after what almost happened to me as a child. This episode took place in the forest at dusk. The dim light made it harder to observe, especially with the characteristic poor film quality of episodes from Caledon Local 21. The episode opened with the camera held in Mr. Bear's bare hand, pointed at himself. That bear mask looked even scarier in the shadows of the forest. The familiar muffled voice spoke. "Hello, little ones. Today I'm going to do something wonderful for my friends. I'm going to take them to a distant land where they are sure to be happy." Mr. Bear turned the camera towards an ATV with a trailer hitch at the back, but what stood out most was that in the trailer were 7 motionless children, neatly lined up side by side. "This is the first trip, but there will be many more," Mr. Bear said. He turned and pointed to a large canvas tarp spread on the ground. He lifted the tarp to reveal a large pit, about 12 feet deep and about 15 feet wide. The rest of the episode was just Mr. Bear tossing each child into the pit one by one. I asked Wilson if the children were dead. He shook his head and replied, "Not yet. Soon." All the children were in the pit, some in awkward positions from being thrown in, but they were still unconscious. "Vitamin C will certainly help these little ones on the great journey that awaits them," Mr. Bear said while the camera panned to a pile of gasoline cans next to a bush. The camera zoomed in on the pile of cans as Mr. Bear began to hum a tune before the episode ended. Wilson revealed to me that these were 7 of the 16 victims found charred. Gasoline was what the man playing Mr. Bear used to burn them alive. A pit full of burned children. Who could do that? Once again, the feeling of horror washed over me as I realized I could have been one of those children. Wilson then explained that he had lied to me earlier. The 4th tape, kept by the Bramelia Police Branch, was actually still functional and contained actual footage of the victims being burned alive. However, he thought I wouldn't be able to handle the shocking and horrific content of the episode, and you know what? Perhaps I really couldn't. I didn't even want to watch it. I was satisfied enough with what I knew. But now I need some time to recompose myself. The problem is, the man behind Caledon Local 21 is still out there, free. There will be more to say later. Signed, Elliot. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Elliot. Elliot was a smart boy who loved to play with his friends. One day, he watched a lovely TV show about a bear and his little friends. The children loved helping each other, as good children should, and they also loved the bear. The bear loved the children because they were so good at helping him and the fallen angel. The children and the bear wanted to play forever with the help of their friend Booby, but the fallen angel needed more help. So the children had to make the ultimate sacrifice because that's what friends should do. "Elliot, they help each other. Help us, Elliot. Burn with us, Elliot. I want you, Elliot. He wants you too, Elliot. Come back to my cellar, please, with sugar and sprinkles on top." Signed, Mr. Bear. Update, April 14, 2015. I really wanted to update more, truly I did, but certain circumstances have made me stop investigating the whole Caledon Local 21 story. Since then, I've received hundreds of emails about this blog, and even been contacted by a magazine about my story, but now it's time for me to confess to everyone where I've been for the past year. The story of Pandora's box is real, and I opened it. I opened it last June when I watched the 4th tape that the Bramelia Police Branch kept. About the 4th tape. After a few weeks of silence, I decided to ask Mitchell Wilson if I could watch that infamous tape. I don't know why, I just felt that watching that tape would bring closure to this story. Wilson obviously didn't want to show it to me, but I insisted. Finally, he made an offer. If by the time I turned 20, I still wanted to watch it, he would allow it. With no other choice, I had to patiently wait until June when I turned 20. I still really wanted to watch the tape. I called Wilson, and he admitted that he had hoped I would forget about the request, but I flat out refused to take no for an answer. "You really don't need to see it," he kept reminding me, but I needed to see it. At that time, I had to see it. True to his word, he invited me to the Bramelia branch one Monday afternoon. Mr. Bear's Cellar, Episode 31. As Wilson went to retrieve the tape from the storage room, The police officer in charge shook his head and looked at me, his eyes seeming to say, "What are you doing?" Wilson explained that this tape contained the last known episode of Mr. Bear's Cellar. I was almost certain I was about to witness the children's fate, and a feeling of anxiety began to engulf me. The episode began in a forest, like previous episodes. It took me a while to realize this because it was nighttime, and the trees and foliage just looked like dancing shapes in the darkness. A faint light appeared on the right side of the screen. There was no clear sound, seemingly a windy night, but the trees made no noise. Slowly, the camera began to pan towards the light, revealing smoke rising from a pit with flickering flames. Wilson paused the video here and asked me, "Are you sure you want to continue?" I firmly answered yes, even though a voice in my head told me not to. The video continued. The cameraman approached the pit, revealing a fire pit. This was the same pit I had seen in the previous episode, but this time it was full of figures. I could see them moving, flapping, struggling, some were still. I knew very well what they were. The camera began to adjust the light, and charred red and black flesh, blurred movements of colors and shapes. I wish I could forget what I saw, but you can't forget a sight like that. This wasn't a horror movie, this was reality. Human beings murdered in a horrific way, a fate I almost met. The video abruptly cut to dawn. The camera was now placed further from the pit. The fire had died down, but smoke still smoldered. A figure emerged in front. I recognized it immediately. Mr. Bear's suit, stretched out on the ground, empty, but still as terrifying as ever. The suit was arranged in the shape of a cross. The cameraman walked around the suit, treating it like a treasure. Placed at the head of the suit was a plaque with INRI printed in bold red letters. Clearly, the cameraman walked back to the end of the suit, zooming in on the bear's face. The episode ended here. I was completely stunned. It was like a nightmare. You can find many terrible things on the internet, but I had never seen anything like this. Wilson asked me if I was okay, and I replied in a trembling voice, "Okay." I reassured him as we left that I was fine and that the video had given me some sense of closure. He didn't seem to believe me much, but didn't say anything more. He was right. I was haunted by nightmares for weeks. I gave up caring about the whole story. A psychopath burned a bunch of children alive, luring them with a fake children's TV channel. I could have been one of the victims, and yet I'm still here. Perhaps I should be grateful, but instead, I feel guilty. Am I still alive only by luck? 10 months later, I'm back, but now I need to talk about something else. My inbox has been flooded with messages. Some ask for more details, some ask me to upload the tapes, and some claim to be Mr. Bear. First, I cannot upload the tapes because A, they belong to the police as evidence, and B, I don't know how to transfer VHS to a computer. To those pretending to be Mr. Bear, you're not fooling me. When dozens of people pretend to be the same person, it doesn't work. I've even seen a fake Caledon Local YouTube channel, quite funny, but still not real. Worse, someone hacked my account just to post a twisted poem about me on this blog. I will contact Mitchell Wilson again and hopefully be able to watch the tapes held by other police branches in Peel. I will try to update you all as soon as possible. I'm sure this time it won't take a whole year. Thank you all for continuing to follow this blog.